Hi, this is Mason Miller with Game Array. The date is June 5th, 2016. Overwatch came out about a week and a half ago. I've been more or less playing the game nonstop since then. It's one of the best multiplayer shooters in recent years, at least that I can think of, and I wanted to take the time to talk about why. What makes Overwatch stand out, at least at first glance, is its varied roster of 21 heroes. Each hero is so diverse, so different, that it sometimes feels like you're playing an entirely different genre, going from one to the next. But it's the details of how they did this, how Blizzard used it at a mechanical level, and how they still managed to never overwhelm the player that makes Overwatch so damn interesting. In the last video about shooting in first person, I talked about how each gun needs to be defined by a set of variables that are statistically independent from one another in order for weapons to feel unique. This process is called Orthogonal Unit Differentiation, which I probably pronounced wrong. One of the definitions of orthogonal being statistically independent. A viewer pointed out how the concept probably deserves its own video, and he or she is probably right. In fact, I know they're right. But luckily, a lot of resources on the subject already exist. Mark Brown did a great job talking about this concept in his video on Doom, and there are two very good GDC talks on the subject as well. One by Matthias Voigt, and another by Harvey Smith. I'll link to all three in the video description below. So why am I bringing all of this up before diving into Overwatch? It's actually kind of simple. In Harvey Smith's presentation, he talks about the importance of making sure each game pieces being heroes in Overwatch's case, making sure each game piece is orthogonally differentiated. Each game piece should be comprised of heterogeneous qualities so that game piece X will help solve the technical deficiencies of game piece Y, but where more of game piece Y would never help solve its own technical deficiencies. Think of Marines and medevacs in Starcraft. Marines can never heal each other. No matter how many of them you have, one Marine can never heal another Marine. But medevacs can. They help solve the deficiencies of Marines and vice versa. These two units are differentiated because the units are defined by two statistically independent variables, healing and damage. The same can be said for almost every hero in Overwatch. No matter how many McCrees you have, you'll never be able to reflect Bastion's bullets like Genji can. And no matter how many Genjis you have, you'll never be able to buff nearby allies like Lucio or shield them like Reinhardt. As Harvey Smith pointed out, orthogonally differentiated game pieces encourage intended strategic play. Anytime you die or return to base in Overwatch, you can switch characters. And anytime I do switch up, it feels intentional. I do it for strategic reasons, and that intentionality feels good. The ability to swiftly change from one hero to the next gives each match a real sense of progression. The team you're playing against at the start might be composed of entirely different heroes by game's end. That evolution reminds me of MOBAs like Dota or League. In those games, you need to keep a close eye on enemy item builds so that you can carefully tweak your own purchases to counter theirs. The same thing happens here, except it's the characters you're playing as and not the items you have equipped that can change the course of battle. This topsy-turvy tug-of-war is the key difference when you compare Overwatch to its contemporaries, and it only works because Overwatch is built from the ground up around this idea. The game goes out of its way to make sure the battlefield is easy to read, so you're always tempted to switch it up the next time you're in base or die. It does this in a few different ways. The first is through character design and animation. Each character is easy to find on the battlefield because their color scheme and silhouettes are so recognizable. On top of that, Overwatch uses perceived affordances to help players remember what each character does. A perceived affordance being the quality of an object that suggests how it should be used. A doorknob, for example, suggests pulling, whereas a bar suggests pushing. The same could be said for a lot of heroes in Overwatch. Mei's winter coat suggests her ability to freeze an enemy. Pharah's jump pack suggests her ability to fly, and Mercy's medical attire and angelic wings suggest her ability to heal. The second is through Overwatch's smart audio design. Scott Lawler and Thomas Neumann did a great GDC talk about this last March, and I'll put a link to that in the description as well. Their stated goal was to make the game playable even with your eyes closed. To do that, Overwatch encodes more information in audio design than I've ever seen before. The sounds you hear are the ones most important to decision making. Not necessarily the ones that would be the loudest in a traditional first-person shooter. You hear voiceovers instead of gunshots, quiet footsteps over swelling music. You hear the players that are aiming at you instead of the ones that are closest to you. Each character's weapon fire and footsteps sound different, and anytime an enemy player triggers an ultimate, their character's voiceover will announce it, warning you and your allies of the coming danger. These voiceover announcements have two different lines, one for when the hero is an ally, and another for when the hero is an enemy. Other than that, there is no variation, so over time you learn when to advance and when to retreat by these audio cues. Overwatch also employs a third strategy to make players feel comfortable making strategic decisions on the battlefield. It's a tricky one, it's subtle, but it definitely works. A lot of people, a lot of reviews, a lot of other YouTubers have pointed out how Overwatch takes the last 2 decades of first-person shooters as inspiration for its characters' mechanics. That's certainly true, there's no doubt about it. Pharah's weapon and verticality are very reminiscent of Quake and Unreal Tournament. D.Va reminds me of Titanfall, Mercy plays similar to Team Fortress 2's Medic, and Soldier 76's control and mechanics aren't too far off from Call of Duty. It does go beyond that though, it also takes gameplay cues from outside the FPS world as well. Just look at Symmetra as a nod to tower defense games, or look at how Roadhog's giant hook took inspiration from MOBA characters like Pudge and Blitzcrank. These character types and homages resonate so well with gamers that they barely need to be explained by Blizzard. Overwatch almost uses that resonance as a teaching tool for players to learn how each character works. It's what Mark Rosewater calls piggybacking, which he defines as the use of pre-existing knowledge to front-load game information to make learning easier for players. Even in their first few matches, players can use their pre-existing knowledge to make creative and strategic decisions. It becomes easy for them to put one and one together and realize that Genji could be a hard counter to Bastion, that Roadhog could do great at pulling support classes out of position, that Pharah's rockets and jump pack will let her fire over Reinhardt's shield. And even though these mechanics have been taught to most of us by other games, we will feel like we're making the discoveries ourselves. We will feel ownership over the strategies even though they're obvious and the same strategies everyone else is using because we came up with them ourselves, not through some guide on YouTube. And that sense of ownership increases player agency, and it increases it early on. It's the real reason I've found Overwatch so addictive from the get-go, and pretty much why I've been playing it non-stop. There are some things I don't like though. McCree has no legit answer aside from more McCree. Hanzo's arrows have a hitbox the size of a basketball, and sometimes there doesn't feel like there's enough options to customize my heroes. I don't really care about the microtransactions, they can stay. But I have a hard time complaining about any specific in this game when the underlying design is so well thought out. Anyway, this is just a quick video on Overwatch. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. I appreciate all the support after the last video, and I hope everyone's excited for more. I know I am. See you later.